Good morning, dear students. Let us start today's class. In this class, we will be dealing with the chapter 1 of class 11 biology, the living world. Chapter 1, the living world. What is living world made of? It contains millions of different creatures, living organisms, or the living world comprises of millions of plants and animal species that occupy in this biosphere. Now, when we say living world, surely there will be non-living world also. It's not separate, both these things are together. Because the living organisms cannot exist without non-living things there. We require so many living, non-living materials for our survival. If you are asked to name the living organisms that are found around you, you will be naming the various type of plants and animals that survive around us. So you will find a huge variety of living organisms all over the earth. And all these are regarded as living organisms. Now the question is, how will you differentiate a living organism from a non-living thing? What differences you can observe in characters of living things which is different from that of the non-living things? That is what we are going to study first. The living characteristics which make them different from non-living things. Let us go through these characters of living organisms. The list that you can make when you look at the characters will be so lengthy. Let us identify some of the important characters only. Rest you can add upon by yourself. Okay, we'll just identify some of them and we'll go through in detail of some of these characters. Rest you will make by your own. Right? So these are some of the characters mentioned here. You can see the examples. Characteristics of living organisms. Growth, reproduction, metabolism, body organization, consciousness, then response to stimuli, heredity, adaptation, then ability to evolve. So these are some of the common characteristics of living creatures. There are many more you can add upon. For example, movement is an example of a living characteristics. Cellular structure is another example. We say that it's organization, cellular organization of the body. There is a lifespan for living organisms. They will go for death. Likewise, you can make so many different characters that make them different from non-living things. So if you consider all these characters, you can say that living organisms are self-replicating and self-evolving, self-interacting systems capable of reproducing themselves. So such organisms, we call it generally as living organisms, are self-replicating, evolving and interacting systems, self-interacting systems which are capable of reproducing themselves. They are called living organisms. Now let us see some of these characteristics in detail. Say the first one, growth. First characteristics we'll deal with is about growth. What is growth? A general definition will be increase in size. Increase in size of an individual. We call it as growth. Or increase in size of any material. We can say that it is its growth. Right? Now, increase in size can be of two different types. Increase in size may be by developing materials or increasing materials inside. We call it as internal growth. Or another term that you can use is intrinsic growth. Internal or intrinsic growth. When materials are taken inside and that are used for making more and more constituents of the living material, living matter. That is what we call it as internal growth, which you will see in living organisms, where they take food materials and utilize these food material for making more number of cells in their body, and thereby they will help this growth of these cells, so that the enlargement of the cells will be there, increase in protoplasmic content will be there, and that will go to what is known as internal or intrinsic type of growth. So here internal growth can be either by increasing the content of protoplasm. Increase in content of protoplasm can be a method for internal growth, where they contribute these nutrients what the organisms take for making protoplasm. That is called increased content of protoplasm will lead to internal growth. Or another method is by increasing the number of cells in the body. New cells are formed through cell division, and they are adding to the total number of cells in their body, so that will also help in increasing the size of the organism. So this is the nature of growth that take place in living organisms. We call it as internal or intrinsic growth. They consume food nutrients, and that will provide necessary material for the increased content of protoplasm, or by increasing the number of cells present in their body, that will help in increasing the size of organism. This is what is happening in the case of living organisms, where we call the growth as internal or intrinsic, which is by increasing in mass. When protoplasmic content increase, that will contribute to the total mass of the organism, or it may be by increasing the number of cells present in their body. So that is internal type of growth. Whereas growth is possible in non-living things also. There are many more examples. You can cite more examples about the growth that is happening in non-living things. We say that mountains grow. During the winter season in icy mountains, snow-covered mountains, you will see more and more snow falling over it. That will help in increasing the size of the mountain, where we can say that it's a type of growth. Or in a desert, you will see, you might have seen in pictures or real life situations also, where you have seen the sand will be deposited over the other, so that it will make small sand hills. More and more deposition of sand over it will help in increasing the size of that sand hill. This is another example. We studied that rocks can grow by depositing materials over it. So in all these cases, the growth is because of the addition or accumulation of materials already deposited. So more and more materials are adding outside to its body, thereby the total size of the individual is increasing. So this type of growth, we call it as external growth. Growth can be second type of growth can be external, that take place by adding or depositing materials over the existing substance. External, or we call it as extrinsic growth. So growth can be internal or external. Internal type or intrinsic type of growth is taking place in living organisms, whereas non-living organism will show external or extrinsic type of growth. So this is the difference between the growth of living and non-living things. Now we know that living things are of two main types. We say that they are the plants and animals mainly. Say the major two categories of living organisms are plants and animals. They show the growth in different manner. Though both of them show internal type of growth, there are some characteristic features for plant growth as well as animal growth. If you say plants, in plants, the growth is said to be indefinite. And the plants are having some region for its growth, restricted to certain regions. So this is the nature of growth what is found in plants. They grow continuously. Just from the starting of germination of the seed. And talking about higher plants, lower plants will have some other methods of growing. So it starts from the development or germination of the seed and it will continue till the end of the life of that organism, till it dies, till the plant dies. That type of growth is called indefinite growth, which will help in increasing the size of the plant body. So we call it as indefinite growth. But the peculiar feature of plant growth is it is restricted to certain regions. Growing regions are there in plants. All parts will not grow. There are certain regions growing. So the growth is restricted to these regions. There is specialized tissue in plants for effecting growth. It's called meristematic tissue. So these tissues will help in increasing the size of the plant body. So that's a peculiar feature of plant growth. Whereas in animals, if you take the case of animals, they also grow. Internal growth they will show, but their growth is said to be definite. That is, they will grow only up to a certain stage. Further increase in size will not be there. There is a maximum size for every animal. To attain that growth, they will grow. To attain that size, they will grow. Further growth will not be there. The materials that provides nutrients taken even after there is attaining full growth, complete growth, is used for replacement or repair of tissue and replacement of worn out tissues. So that's why further growth will not be there. That's why we call it as definite in nature. Or another term you can use is indefinite growth is continuous, we say. Continuous growth starting from germination of seeds, it will continuously grow till the end of its life. Whereas in discontinuous growth, the growth will discontinue after a certain period of growth. The growth will discontinue after attaining the maximum size of that individual. Right? Now, the second practice in animal is, what you will find the peculiarity is, the growth is said to be wholesome. Wholesome growth, or we say that it is happening from inside in every part. It's not like the head only growing upwards. It is not like that, or the length of the arm will not be growing to continue. It's not like that. Total body, the complete body will grow from inside, so that there will be a proper ratio between the different organs. One part will not grow continuously and the other part will not stop its growth. It's not like that. So we say that the growth is not restricted to any regions of our body. Every part of the body can grow so that it will attain that particular shape of the animal. So that is different from the growth shown by plants. So we call it as wholesome growth. This is a peculiar feature of animal growth. So growth may be of two types, intrinsic or extrinsic, and plant growth is different from animal growth. Now we will go for the second character shown by living organisms. First one, growth. Another example, we will go for reproduction. Reproduction, the second character we are going to explain. We are going to find some details. What is reproduction? Is the capacity to produce, capacity of living organisms to produce its own kind. A dog is able to make its puppies, young ones. A plant can make its seedlings. So this practice of making new individuals of their own type is called reproduction. It's the ability to produce individual organisms of same kind. Non-living things cannot make new materials or new things of that type by its own. You may cut a chalk into two pieces so that it becomes two separate ones. But this will not be possible if some force is not acting over it. And further, these pieces will not grow to become a full-sized chalk like this. Right? So that is why the ability of reproduction, producing its own kind, is assigned to living organisms only. So reproduction is a characteristic property of living organisms. Now, when you talk about reproduction, there are two methods of reproduction. In the living world, you will see the methods of asexual and sexual practices for effecting reproduction. Reproduction can take place through sexual mode or asexual mode. Sexual mode is one in which sexual cells or sexually reproducing cells, we call it as gametes, are produced, and these gametes fuse together to make new individuals through zygote and embryo. That is the sexual mode of reproduction. Where two different parents are involved, they make two different type of gametes that will fuse together to make new individuals. There are exceptional cases in it. I am talking about general case. In plants also, male and female plants or bisexual plants will be there. They will exchange their pollen grains and that will effect in fertilization, leading to formation of seed, and seed will germinate into new plants. We call it as seedling. This method of reproduction we call it as sexual mode of reproduction, where male and female gametes are produced, sperm and ovum are produced, and that will help in producing new individuals through fertilization or syngamy, we call it the process. Now the second practice is called asexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, these reproductive cells, gametes, are not produced. Gametes will not be produced. Specialized organs will not be there for production of gametes, and the one parent which is involved in reproduction can produce new individuals through different practices. Maybe by dividing the body, or maybe by making spores inside their body, or maybe by making buds in their body, they will be able to generate new individuals. So whatever may be the practice of reproduction, the character of reproduction is shown by living organisms. That is another character of living organism. Now coming to the third one. Another important character shown by living organism. For example, it is metabolism. Is another important character. What is meant by metabolism? This refers to the chemical reactions that take place in the body of living organisms. Sorry, one more point I forgot to tell you when I talked about reproduction. Let me come back to this reproduction, then we will go for that. One missing point. So when we talk about reproduction, I told you living organisms can reproduce. You may have doubts. There are many individuals who cannot reproduce by their own. We call such individuals as sterile. Even in human beings, sterile individuals are there who cannot produce their own kids. You might have seen couples not having kids because of this sterile nature of mother or father. They may not be having the capacity to produce young ones or to produce these gametes, or the gametes produced may be having different problems, or different other reasons will also make them sterile in nature. So that is why you cannot consider these two, say growth and reproduction. This may happen, there are contradictions for these two. It's not only for living organisms only. That's why it makes it a little bit difficult to make it as a defining character. Right? there are individuals who cannot reproduce. They are called sterile ones. Okay, coming to the third one, metabolism. Metabolism is nothing but the chemical reactions that take place inside the organism. The reactions that take place, there are so many hundreds of reactions are taking place in our body when we are living. When I am talking here in front of you, so many things are happening inside my body through chemical changes. Where chemicals are involved, molecules are involved in making them, or molecules are broken down to make some other molecules. Making and breaking process continuously taking place. That's the basis of this living character. Otherwise, we will not be able to survive. Suppose I had my breakfast in the morning. I just had my breakfast and it is there inside my stomach and intestine where the chemical reactions are going on with the help of enzymes. Enzymatic reactions we call. So such type of reactions are taking place inside my cells also. Some of the molecules are absorbed into the bloodstream and it is carried to the cells where it is being broken down into energy rich molecules. And some of these molecules are utilized inside my body in glands and all, where they are used for making protein, synthesizing protein for different purposes. So all these are chemical reactions that take place in our body. Now these reactions together we call it as metabolic reactions, or it is called metabolism. Now when you consider these chemical reactions, they are of two types. We call it as anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism and catabolism. I will give you examples so that easily you will understand what is anabolism and catabolism. Those type of reactions in which larger molecules are synthesized in the body or in a living system. In a living system, if larger molecules are synthesized using smaller ones, tiny particles, then we call that type of reactions as anabolism. For example, in our body, we make use of amino acids to make respective proteins required for body functions. So this is a process, chemical reaction, in which smaller amino acid molecules are used for making large size protein molecule. Here you are synthesizing bigger molecules, and these type of reactions, chemical reactions involving the synthesis of larger molecule using smaller ones, those type of reactions are called anabolic reactions. Now the second one is catabolic reactions. When smaller molecules are used to synthesize bigger one, it requires energy. Energy is required for construction purpose. Sometimes energy is released also. Involvement of energy is there. Inside the living system, energy is obtained through ATP molecules. We studied in lower classes. Now coming to the second one, catabolism. What is catabolism? Just the opposite of this type of reactions. Opposite of this type of reactions. For example, say digestion of food material, starch that enters inside our body. Starch that enters inside our body is enzymatically degraded. This is broken down. And what it will make? This will make glucose molecules. So synthesizing glucose, making glucose by breaking down starch molecules that take place inside our mouth with the help of saliva, or that take place inside our intestine with the help of carbohydrates, enzymes required. These type of reactions take up large molecules, and when the reactions are over, smaller, simpler molecules are formed. These type of reactions we call it as catabolic reactions. This is another example. So, reactions that take place in our body, we call it as metabolic reactions. They are of two types. It may be anabolism or catabolism. These type of reactions are not taking place in non-living things. You may be able to do the same type of actions outside the living system also. Not only inside, outside also the same type of reactions can be carried out using these enzymes and all. So these are considered as a living property, metabolic reactions. Now coming to the next one. Another important character of living organism is body organization. Another important character of living organism is that their body is having a special pattern of arrangement. A special pattern of arrangement you will see in these organisms, where you will find that their body is made of fundamental units, basic units. And these basic units we call it as cells. In higher organisms, there are organisms with only one cell in their body where they can perform all these life activities with the help of these cells. Whereas in higher organisms, you will find that cells join to become tissues, combine together to become what is known as organ, and organs will become organ system, and an individual is made of many such organ systems. Say for example, if you take human beings, for example, our body contains is made of around 10 organ systems. And each organ system is having its own organs. Say for example, digestive system. It comprises of mouth, then esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine. These are different organs of an organ system. And each of these organs, if you consider mouth for example, it will be having different type of tissues in it. Say the epithelial tissue covering our mouth inside. For example, we do have muscular tissues on our cheeks, inside our cheeks, which will help in contraction and relaxation, that will help in movement of our teeth and tongue inside. Or the jaw muscles will help in bringing them to nearer or away, that will help in crushing or chewing the food material. We do have salivary glands inside which will produce, this is made of glandular tissue which will produce some substances. And each of these tissue is made of cells, maybe muscle cells, blood cells, nerve cells, glandular cells, different type of cells are there, and that make up the basis of living organisms. So there is a particular pattern of arrangement of body organs. Cells into tissues, tissues into organs, organs into organ systems, and organ system into organism. This is what we call it as hierarchical system of body organization. Hierarchical system of body organization. Here the pattern shown in the PowerPoint is the ascending pattern, where you can see the cells forms the basis. Many cells join to become tissues. So the next higher category is organ, next higher is organ system. Like this, there is a hierarchical ascending order of levels of organization which is found in organisms. There is no such particular pattern found in non-living things. So we can consider this one as an important characteristic of living organisms. Body organization. So in plants also you will find this pattern. You see here, plant cells will form plant tissues will become plant organs, and that will become organ systems of plants, and then plant as an individual. So these are some of the important characteristics of living organisms which make them very different from other organisms. So another important character, consciousness is another important, where living organisms can understand what is happening around its habitat or around its environment or in the environment in which they live. And because of that, they can understand and feel it, and based on that understanding, they will be able to respond against it. Right? ability to sense and respond to their environmental stimuli or stimulus response. We studied it in lower class and class 10 and all, where an external stimuli can cause a certain type of reaction inside the body. It can be in the case of plants, it is possible. In the case of animals also, it is possible. So this is what we call it as consciousness, is the ability of organisms to feel, to experience, or to feel, or the wakefulness or self-awareness of organisms. Non-living things are not happening this. Irrespective of the things that is happening around the material, it will remain there. But in the case of living organisms, the picture shown here is about sunflowers which may move according to the availability of sunlight, is an influencing factor in. We studied in class 10 about the response of plants, tropical movements we have studied. Animals are having better awareness. They do have a brain which will receive these stimuli and make proper decisions to respond against it. So this is another important characteristics of living organisms, right? So these are some of the examples for characteristics of living organisms. You may be able to list out many more. I told you from the starting itself. So what are the main things we studied here? Living things are entirely different from non-living things. That's the main point. And what makes them different is these characters what we have studied. Like growth is an example. Difference in growth shown by plants, living things and non-living things. Then difference in reproduction. Reproduction is a characteristic property of living organism. Third, we have studied is about metabolism. Fourth is consciousness. You can make the list still more. We have identified it first. It will take hours together to explain all these characters. So you can note down this, list out these characters, what make them different from non-living things. So we will stop the class here. The rest of the chapter will continue in the next class. Okay.